Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Epic Evolution figure to check out. Yes, we have ourselves the Triceratops, the Gigantic Triceratops, or the Tundra Triceratops, whatever you'd like to call it. It's had quite a few names up until this point, but it is a figure that actually looks a lot nicer in person than I was expecting it to, and it's definitely a figure that when we had first seen it unveiled, I believe at SDCC, it was a little underwhelming, and at that point in time, I was like, wow, that really is like not Mattel's standard quality, but in hand, it actually, again, I think personally looks a lot better than I was expecting it to. It also has gone through quite a few different color schemes till we got to this point, and there seemed to be this really neat looking teal version, which I kind of hope maybe sees the light of day. I wouldn't mind two variants of this out. If there's a teal version, I would definitely go hunting for it. But you can see the box art looks pretty much like it usually does, just like it did on the Neovinator. And then when you turn it around and you take a look here at the back of the box, you can see basically what the action feature is, which looks like it's going to be pretty fun. You can see that this one also is evolved for battle, similar to the Neovinator was. And also you can see a sneak peek down there of the Neovinator, even though we already have a review up on the channel for that figure. So if you are interested, make sure you check out that review. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. So here is our Triceratops, and it looks pretty cool. Definitely not bad. I don't feel like it's nearly as large as the previous Habitat Defender version. I don't know why. I thought it was going to be the same size as that figure, but definitely is a bit smaller. However, again, it doesn't look bad at all. It really is cool to see them kind of switch it up and give us a different style Triceratops compared to what we are used to. Almost looks like a hybrid version of a Triceratops. So as always, let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at it and check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Triceratops, you can see it does have some really nice detail, and similar to the Neovinator, for the most part, looks like it has kind of a fully painted look to it. So I do appreciate Mattel adding in a little extra when it comes to the paint apps. We primarily have like a grayish tone for the body. Then we've got some brown there that kind of like borders around the eye and then just kind of splotches out, almost like a splatter sort of effect, like maybe a dinosaur had to go to the bathroom and was a little too close to the face of this Triceratops. You can also see we've got a yellow eye as well as a black pupil, which definitely looks nice. The skin texture here in the face looks really good. One thing that is a little distracting though is the fact that there's a very obvious seam running along here. I'm not too sure if any of the previous Triceratops have had that, but I don't really remember that. But you can see the beak looks really good when it comes to the actual sculpt. You can see some cracks and crevices within the beak. It also has this nice light, sort of like a khaki tone for that area. Same deal for the horns up here on the top of the head. You can see they as well are sculpted really nicely. They also have some nice cracks and crevices in them, and they are painted with a very bright white for both, or I should say all three of the horns. Looks like one of the horns is kind of sticking up here, and I don't think that there's any sort of an action feature with those. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, though. I know there's like a thing here on the back of the head that you're supposed to use to, evolve your Triceratops and have those grow out. I don't think it has anything to do with those, though. I'm not sure why it looks a little strange right there. I guess it doesn't look too bad. It just looks, from this vantage point, it almost looks like the horn's falling out, but then when you come down here and look at it, you can see that's just the way it's sculpted. But as you move up, you see a very heavily armored kind of a look for the Triceratops, which is one of the things that a lot of people were kind of put off by. But I think, again, myself included, but here in person, it actually looks a lot cooler than I was expecting it to. And you can see as you move up, the actual texturing is really nicely done, and you have some more areas of that sort of armored look painted out with that brown, similar to what we have in the face. You can see that the spikes that lead around the frill, although sculpted nicely, are unpainted, unfortunately. And then when you turn it over here, you can see the head and everything looks just as nice as it did on the initial side. One thing, though, you'll see looking at the Triceratops, when we look at it from right here on the side, it almost looks like it doesn't have a neck, and that's because of the action feature. So if we wanted to extend the neck, you basically have to do that, which pushes the neck out and causes our Triceratops to attack. But now I guess the neck looks a little too long. I don't know. I guess we'd have to like bring it back in somehow and maybe put it right around there or a little longer. Yeah, somewhere around there I think would be a decent length for the neck, but it's one or the other. It's either all the way out or all the way in. Again, here in the back of the frill, you can see we've got a few random little osteoderms as well as some really nice looking scale detail back here. You can also see there's like a little rubber band here holding this in, which we'll get to that eventually so that we can, you know, basically pop these hornsy spikes out up here on the top of the frill of the Triceratops to evolve it. You can see the actual detailing of the neck looks pretty good. We can also see at this point that there is a speckling on the figure as well. And then as you move back here into the body, you have a very armored sort of a look for this. Again, I guess the tougher skin maybe helps this dinosaur live in the Arctic climate that it, you know, currently resides. I would imagine that's probably the, you know, motivation behind the appearance of this Triceratops. It does, again, look pretty cool. Almost sort of resembles like a Jurassic Park style Triceratops with this very interesting upgraded look, because we still have those osteoderms that kind of move through, which is something you see on a Jurassic Park, you know, style Triceratops, but obviously it's very different as far as the sculpt goes. So it almost looks like they took the JP Triceratops and, you know, obviously it's epic evolution, they evolved it into this. As you move down here into the front leg, you can see the elbow sculpted out, a little bit more of that sort of armored look right there, but then you get to some really nice fine scale detail and skin texture. You lead down into the foot sculpt, the toes are nicely sculpted, you've got some creasing in the ankle. The nails, again, are not painted, but they do have a nice gloss coat, so they do shine, kind of giving them the appearance of having paintwork. You can also see that we have a light tone running from the beak, actually, which is the same tone as the beak, and then it runs along the underside of the Triceratops, leading along and runs all the way here till we hit like the end of the stomach region before disappearing. As we lead back here to the rear leg, you can see again a little bit more of that kind of armored look leading down, and then again transitioning to the really nice scale detail like we see on the front leg. You can see the knee right there, the calf muscles, some creasing in the back of the knee as well. And then you lead down again into the rear foot sculpt, which also looks nice. And again, that gloss coat definitely looks good on the nails. I really hope they keep doing that. I noticed they were doing that a lot on the basic figures that I had just recently reviewed as well. And then you lead out here into the tail, and we continue to, again, still have that same look where we've got those really, like, heavily armored sort of, like, large scales on the top of the dinosaur, and then leading down you have the much finer scaling here on the side. As you lead out here, though, you only have the grayish tone. There's no other color variation outside of the speckling that you'll see out here in the tail as you lead out. You have a nice little curve to the tail as well. As you lead out, you can see that armored look kind of diminish here, and then the rest of the tail is just the scales. We do have a swivel for that spot, and then of course the leg articulation is actually very jumpy, kind of similar to what we saw on the Neovinator recently. You can see again, same deal. Seems to move a little bit better, like there's more range of movement for this than there was for the Neovinator, but similar as far as the way it actually does move, just has a little bit more length that the legs can kind of extend out forward and back. You can also see some really nice scale detail here in the stomach region as well. And then when we turn the Triceratops around, you're going to see pretty much the same thing, except for the fact that the legs are in a different position. Both legs on this side are kind of stepping forward, whereas both legs on the other side are kind of trailing back, and you can see everything looks pretty much the same over here again as far as both the sculpt and paintwork. The figure is actually a little heavier than I expected as well. Not that it's heavy, but it's just like heavier than the Habitat Defender Triceratops was, I think. You can also see the app code here if you would like to add this one to your collection in the Jurassic Facts app. But again, it's not the best Triceratops Mattel has released, there's no question about that, but it is still actually kind of cool. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the snout, you are looking at about 12.5 inches or around 32 centimeters, and then for a height, you are at about 6 inches to that top spike there, or a little over 15 centimeters. As far as the articulation and everything goes, we already saw that, but we didn't see the action feature entirely, so as you can see, the head actually goes down. So if you pull it back, you can see that the head can kind of rock. So once you push it forward, it puts the head down, so then you can extend it to attack. That's actually pretty neat. Again, Mattel coming up with very creative action features continuously. Then we're going to take this off so we can get an idea as far as these evolving spikes on the frill. And you basically want to Oh, I see. You can push them down so that they completely are then gone, and it looks a little bit more like a natural version of a Triceratops, not perfectly natural with the skin texture, but then you push it back up, and then the spikes completely extend back out. Pretty interesting. It definitely goes with the Epic Evolution tagline. As far as the size comparison goes, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the human being from Collect A next to our Triceratops, and I don't think we need to do too many comparisons with this one outside of other Triceratops comparisons. So you can see again a pretty good idea of the size with these figures, but the more important comparisons would be, first of all, the battle damage version of the Triceratops, which we know was really quite small. Next to this version, there's obviously a pretty massive size difference. We then have a pretty standard Roarivore size ranged Triceratops, which you can see the Gigantic Trackers version is definitely a bit larger than, as well as the Hammond Collection version of the Triceratops, which you can still see again. The newer Gigantic Trackers version is larger than this one as well. And then, of course, the final piece of the puzzle would be the Habitat Defender Triceratops, which I don't know why. Looking back on it, I thought that this version would be, the Tundra Habitat version would be similar in size to the Habitat Defender. I don't know why I had that in my head, because being a Gigantic Trackers figure, you wouldn't expect it to be in that same size range. But we can very clearly see that these Triceratops are much different in size, and the Habitat Defender version absolutely destroys this new Gigantic Trackers version when it comes to the size. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Epic Evolution Tundra Habitat Gigantic Trackers Triceratops is definitely cooler than I thought it would be, but is still by no means an amazing figure. It's obviously not the best Triceratops we've had from Mattel. I wouldn't say it's one of the best either, but it is kind of fun for what it is. It'll definitely be a memorable release by Mattel just because it is so far off from any of the other Triceratops they have released previously. And it does have a pretty cool look to it. I can give them that. The sculpt is very highly detailed and definitely sports the classic Mattel type of detailing we are used to, where every ounce of the dinosaur is extremely well done from a sculpting standpoint and also really vibrant when it comes to the detail itself. It absolutely has a very unique look to it, but again, it's one of those things where I first saw it, I was really not impressed by it, but having it here in hand, it does look a lot cooler than I expected it to be. On top of that, we've got some pretty nice paint apps for it. Nothing super amazing, but there is some decent paint overall. We've got the nice grayish tone of the body. You have coloration on the underside that runs fairly far out. You also have the browns that show up here and there. The spikes are painted. The beak is painted. The spikes that extend as far as the evolution aspect goes, they're also painted. The only thing missing really on this one, I think, would have been the spikes around the frill. They could have used paintwork, because even though the nails don't have specific paintwork, the gloss coat on them kind of gives them the illusion of having paint, so it actually looks pretty decent as far as that goes. The action feature is pretty fun. It's definitely, what you would like to see for a Triceratops, and works pretty nicely, although it is a little awkward looking at times because it doesn't look like the Triceratops has a neck. It still is pretty fun. And the Epic Evolution aspect, as far as the spikes growing up out of the frill, is definitely a little unique and obviously not something we would see on a real Triceratops, but when it comes to the idea of the dinosaur evolving, I think Mattel did a pretty good job as far as choosing that action feature to give to the figure, and it also kind of makes it look a little bit like a hybrid, which is also kind of neat, I guess. So overall, it is a pretty fun release from Mattel. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be, that's for sure. So if you are interested in grabbing one for yourself, make sure you check your local Target store, because that is exactly where I found mine. And also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.